I'm Hannah. I am an animator who kind of shifted more to design illustration over the path of what I've been doing, but has a hand in kind of all those different things. Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought today we'd talk a little bit about kind of your journey and the work that you're interested in doing and just like you as a person. Just tell us all about it.
Yeah. So I really feel like the way that I got in is kind of stereotypical because I grew up in LA, which is I was really lucky to do, and we both did, so it's very cool. Um, and my parents were always really into Disney, and so they were like, I think my parent was part of like the Disney like fan club D23, and we did like the screening on the lot.
Mm,
It's in the Frog, and I'd always loved drawing. Like, and my parents were really like loving and accepting about it, and they're both teachers, so I think they understood that it's a very much like a, I don't know, they knew that they had taken jobs that maybe necessarily wouldn't make them that much money, so they weren't like, they told me preferably you would, but it's okay if you don't, because
right.
um, and it's what they were both passionate about. But so I'd already been into drawing and art, and then I get there and we do this tour of the studio after we get to see the movie, which was so, I mean, it's one of the best Disney movies, honestly. And we walked around the lot and we got to see like old artwork from Snow White and Cinderella, and then the way that they would use the multiplane for those different cell animations. Um, and it was really a moment where I was like, people make this for a living. And so it felt really, and I was only like 12. Like it wasn't like I don't know. I sort of just knew in that moment that I wanted to do something related to it. In that moment, I was like Disney. But I think as I got older, I realized that animation can take so many forms, and it really is involved in, like different mediums and reasons for making things. It's not all narrative. And really from like, I really do pinpoint that specific moment, and it is funny how specific it is, but it's sort of that moment on where I was like, animation is for me. This is what I'm going to do. But it took a while before I could even actually get started, just because of like the availability of classes and things like that.
Right.
A while meaning like 4 years. I don't know. Like, I know that there are some people who like waited later, but like
Right.
I was really lucky that in high school, I'm trying to think what I did first. Well, I had really great art teachers at my high school because I was able to go on scholarship to a private high school, and they had a really great art program there. Started doing figure drawing, but I sort of knew in the back of my head that animation was what I wanted to be doing. And I knew that there were programs out there that could teach that. So um, I went to first CalArts. I also in my research figured out that CalArts was sort of the place.
Life doing. Yeah.
Disney founded it. Like, as before I even realized that I didn't want to do necessarily character animation, it was like, okay, this place though is kind of the center of it all. And found out they had outreach programs. So they had a summer one while I was in high school, and I went and did that. That was like 4 weeks, and it was at a high school in downtown LA, and it was amazing. It was the first time I got to actually animate, the first time I got to be around other people who were animating. And I met people who were still my classmates today, people who I'm going to CalArts with and experimental.
God.
So it really led me on this amazing path to have friends now who I've had for like 6 years, because I did that program, I think the summer after 10th grade. And so from there, I learned about doing CISA, which is the state sort of summer art school that happens at CalArts. And it's technically not a CalArts program, but they host it there, and it's taught by CalArts alums. So they're like, it's kind of essentially, it was. It's changed a lot since I went. But during the year in between that, they added an animation class at my high school. I continued to do figure drawing. It was sort of just one of those things where I had something that I could see at the end that I wanted to get to. And so I found the places where I could go and learn things that would help me get there. So
Right.
doing that at school, doing that by going, I then got into CISA, and I got to go there for a month, which was amazing. We did figure drawing every day. We did a field trip to go and do life drawing in Malibu. We did, we had screenings of people coming in from different animation studios, and it was amazing. It was a really immersive time to sit with other artists, but also people who made animation for a living, right? The teachers, the first animation program I did was taught by students. And this one is being taught by people who had graduated. There were some assistant teachers who were still going there, but just seeing and witnessing people who sort of lived the life. And it was also the first time that I was really introduced to experimental animation,
Right.
because the people who taught CISA when I was there pretty much all graduated from experimental animation, I think, save for one. And I maybe had heard of the program. I don't even know if I had when I got there, because my mind was always on character. And it was always hard for me, I think, realizing that, because my artwork that was narrative based never felt particularly strong. But at school, I was really into doing nonfiction creative writing, and I really loved just sort of working on telling my story and things like that. But whenever I would try and tell other stories, it always felt like a little bit of a stretch. And so I started getting introduced to documentary animation and nonfiction animation and essay films. And it felt like this sort of another epiphany, I guess, of like, animation can be a story, but the story doesn't have to be something you make up. It can be a story that you've experienced or you've witnessed, something that is based in real life. And I think it's funny because I was never really into documentary film or anything either. I don't know what, but I think I've always been sort of a person who's an oversharer at heart. Like, that was what my family was like. And so it sort of worked perfectly, because I had all these things that were important to me that I wanted to share. I really loved drawing and animating, and it felt like this perfect way to get it out there and making it and really feeling it and being passionate about it. And so that was the first time I made a sort of nonfiction piece. And from then on, it was sort of like, this is what I really love. Like, I maybe tried a little bit there and here and there, but I did another high school program throughout the year after CISA. So I finished that. It was amazing. I met a bunch of more friends, and again, people who are still classmates today, which is amazing. And did a year-long program for high school, also through CalArts, again, being taught by master's students in experimental animation. So at this point, I'm really convinced experimental animation at CalArts is what I want to do, or just documentary animation in general, right? And I made another film that year. So at that point, I'd made 2 short films. I'd made one like kind of experiment. And so I came out of high school with like 2 films that I could submit, and it felt really good to feel like I had at least that experience for wherever I was going to go. But I also knew the CalArts, the acceptance rate was like crazy. So yeah, I think I applied to like 12 schools total. And then I think CalArts was actually one of maybe like a quarter. So I think I maybe got into like 3 or 4. And then CalArts, I maybe was the last one. And as soon as I got that, I was like, okay. I mean, there was so much financial things to figure out. That was a huge part of it, but.
And I've seen some of your work, and it really is, I mean, you've been there for several years now, so it makes sense that your vibe would like mesh with the schools, but like, it really does seem like an energy that really complements you and the things that you want to work on going forward also.
Yeah, I agree. I think at first I didn't know that, because I think I was also struggling to find what I knew. It's funny because I think I'd always had that path, right? But then as soon as the path shifted, I think maybe my confidence wavered a little bit just in the artwork that I was making.
Right.
And so again, I had those years through high school, then I got to CalArts, and I think that sort of made me start over a little bit in terms of the confidence of what I was doing, and also just figuring out what I was doing. Animation had always been the goal, but then once I was actually doing it, it was like, okay, well, what kind and what are you really going to stick to, right? And so again, it sort of was that process. And so now here I am in my 4th year. I really feel like last year and this year, unfortunately, the ones where we're not really there are the moments where I'm like, this does feel like it applies to me, because I am so interested, like you, in so many different mediums. And the school does support that in a lot of ways, right? Like, I've been able to make relationships with teachers who are not in my program, but still super supportive. And yes, you're right, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Like, I agree. But I think at first I was maybe not sure, just because I didn't know how to label myself as an animator.
Absolutely. And I think like I've just been really, really entranced by the work you've done, and I'm excited to see everything that you're going to do. But unfortunately, this is all that we have time to talk about today. We've run out of time, amazingly, even though I have so many more questions about you and your journey.
Oh my God, I talked the whole time. I'm sorry. I hope that's okay.
No, it's perfect. And thank you for being here.
Yeah, of course. Oh my gosh.